Good afternoon, class. Here's Pre-Calculus, Module 1, covering chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1, functions. Chapter 2, linear functions. Here's part 1 for chapter 1. And I want to remind you, as far as the exam is concerned, that is coming up in some time. Before starting the exam, please read the following pledge aloud. I pledge on my honor that I will neither give nor receive unauthorized assistance during this exam, so on and so forth. The purpose of this is just to remind everybody, when you take the exam, you take the exam on your own. I can't emphasize this enough. So functions, complex numbers, quadratic functions. So the first question, answer the following. Find the distance between the 2 points with coordinates -5, -6, and 4, 2. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment that joins the two given points. So reminding everybody to find the distance between 2 points with coordinates x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. We have d equals square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. And that actually comes, the distance comes from the fact that if you look at the concept of a circle, for example, how you arrive at the radius and the diameter as in the same manner. So with that being the case, we want to follow that. And by the way, it doesn't matter in what order because you're squaring it. So you want to calculate this. 4 minus -5, that means 4 plus 5 quantity squared. 2 minus -6, that means plus 6 quantity squared. This is 9 squared, you get 81. 8 squared, you get 64. And you get 145. Now, this is an approximation class. This is an exact answer. And for the approximation, you normally carry a bunch of decimals. You want to pay attention to however many decimals they ask you. Okay. Now, this, you can follow Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Think of this as a, think of this as b, and this one as c. So it's just following Pythagorean theorem. That's for the distance. This is a 90-degree angle. All right, so we want to find the midpoint, and the formula's very simple. You add up the coordinates, divide by 2. So to have an understanding of that, again, we are given the two coordinates. If you draw a parallel line to the x-axis and to the y-axis, and here's the midpoint. That means it's middle of B and C. You drop a perpendicular, and these two are parallel. Now, the two triangles, the small one and the larger one, are similar figures. Triangles ABC, the big one, and CDE, the small one, this one. This is the small. They are similar. Why is that? All angles are equal. This is in common. This is 90 degrees. This is 90 degrees. The other one become equal. Or you can say these two lines are parallel. Either way, when you have similar triangles, corresponding angles are equal, and corresponding sides are in ratio. Therefore, we can write the ratio many different ways. For example, we could write CD from the small one over BC from the large one is the same as CE from the small one to AC from the larger one. And since this is the midpoint, these two are the same. That means CD over BC is 1/2. And that means if you do the cross product, AC is 2 times CE. And if that's the case, if AC is 2 times CE, that means this part CE and this part AE must be equal. So that's the midpoint. Therefore, the coordinates of D, the midpoint, or x equals the midpoint of AC, the average of the x coordinates of A and C, and y, the midpoint of AB, the average of y coordinates of A and B. So we find those, A and B, A and C. And so that's the formula. Now you just plug in, add these two numbers, divide by 2, add these two numbers, divide by 2. Negative 5 and 4 is negative 1, so you get negative 1/2. Negative 6 and 2 is negative 4, divided by 2 is negative 2. And so we have the answer to part A for the distance, the answer to part B for the midpoint. A man drove 10 miles directly east from his home, going this way, made a left turn at an intersection, and then traveled 5 miles north to his place. So going this way, going that way. That's the concept so far. If a road was made directly from his home to his place of work, what would its distance be to the nearest tenth of a mile? So here's what we have. This is 10, this is 5, this distance is missing. So Pythagorean theorem says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That means 10 squared plus 5 squared is c squared. This is 100. This is 25, and c is the square root of that. Square root of 125, roughly 11.18034 miles. I put a lot of decimals. I want to make a point. If they don't ask you for the number of decimals, you have to put the exact answer, okay? And that's the difference between the two. This is an approximation. If they ask you for how many decimals, you want to follow that. If so, how much shorter would the man's one-way trip be every day? Well, the man is going to do 10 plus 5, 15. But if it's direct, it's going to do this much. So 15 minus this number. 10 plus 5 minus the square root of 125. And by the way, this is the nearest tenth, this one. Okay. Next to it is 8. This becomes 11.2. So 3.8 miles is the difference. I want to solve this rational equation. 5 over x plus 1 plus 1 over x minus 3 equals negative 6 over x squared minus 2x minus 3. So what do? We're going to do a couple of things. Number one, we are going to factor every denominator. This is fine, this is fine. This one is x plus 1, x minus 3, because you want two numbers. The product is negative 3, the sum is negative 2. And now it's important to know that if you set this equal to 0, x becomes negative 1, this becomes 3. The same thing here. X cannot be those numbers. You're going to exclude the numbers that will not work. So x can't be negative 1, x can't be positive 3. Now the fastest way to solve this is to multiply both sides by LCD, which is this one, and we write it in the form of a product, factored form. So what happens when we do the multiplication? If you multiply this by this one, you get 5 times x minus 3. This one, 1 times x plus 1, because x minus 3 goes away. If you multiply these two, this completely goes away and becomes -6. I hope nobody has any problem with that. So 5x minus 15 plus x plus 1 equals -6. This one and this one, they add up to 6x. Minus 14 moves, comes plus 14, they add up to 8. 8 over 6, or 4/3, is the final answer. Lines, slopes, interpretation. So slope is defined as rise over run. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Delta y over delta x, rise over run. The average rate of change of y with respect to x. That's the definition of a slope, the interpretation of that. We look at various lines. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. This is a horizontal line, this is a vertical line, this is a line with a positive slope, this is a line with a negative slope. HL, short for horizontal line. Y equals a number, equals a constant. If the y-intercept is at 0b, y equals b, so whatever this number is, okay? And the slope is 0. That's for the horizontal line. The vertical line, x equals a. Vertical line crosses at some point a comma 0 in general. X equals a, m, the slope is undefined. Standard form of a line is ax plus by equals c. Slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Point slope is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Two lines are parallel if they have equal slopes, different y-intercepts. Two lines are perpendicular if their slopes are negative reciprocal of each other. In other words, there are two ways to look at it. M sub 2 is -1 over M sub 1, or their product is -1. This is the synopsis of what we need to know about lines. All right, I'm going to answer the following. For parts A and B, graph the following lines in a rectangular coordinate system and clearly show the intercept on the graph. So x equals a -2. That is a vertical line. So -2. At this point, we have the x-intercept, and it's a vertical line. Horizontal line. So this was -2, 0. This is 0, 3, somewhere here. That's your y-intercept. It's a horizontal line, and you find the equation of a line containing these two pairs, 4, 0 and 4, 5. Well, If you have two pairs and they have identical x coordinates, that means x equals that number is the equation of a line because x is being repeated. It's a vertical line, VL, short for a vertical line. However, if the y coordinates are being repeated, then it's a horizontal line, y equals -7. So pretty straightforward, everybody. Find the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that passes through the two pairs and find the intercepts and graph. First of all, I'd like to remind you of what we just did as far as various stuff, including the slope. So we need to find the slope first. To find the slope, rise over run, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, minus 6 minus 10 over 5 minus minus 3. So that's the first step. Negative 16 over positive 8 is negative 2. We use the point slope, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x sub 1, and we can use any of those pairs, makes no difference. For example, y minus 10, so we're going to use that. Y minus 10 equals negative 2, x minus negative 3, which makes it plus 3. Now, if I use this one, it will look like this. Check it out. Y minus minus 6, that means plus 6, equals m, which is negative 2, x minus 5. Now, please understand these two don't look the same, but when you solve for y, they become identical. So right here, we're going to say this is minus 2x minus 6. This moves, becomes plus 10, and we get y equals minus 2x plus 4. One of the things I highly recommend you always do. After you find the answer, since we use this pair, check it out with this pair. If it doesn't check out, we've made a mistake. So if you plug in 5, negative 2 times 5, negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6. That's how you check, and it takes a split second. So obviously 4 is the y-intercept, meaning 0, 4. And if you set this one equal to 0, you get 2. That's the x-intercept. So if I say 0 equals minus 2x plus 4, I get this. So I can plot the pairs 0, 4, 2, 0, and connect them. I can also have those two pairs, okay? This is negative 310, this is 5 minus 6. So you could graph just using those 2 points without using that. However, this gives you a more precise graph. Find the equation of a line that is perpendicular to 3y equals x minus 4 and passes through the point negative 2 comma 1. Find the intercepts and graph. And again, reminding you of the information we discussed, including parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and so on. So the very first thing we do, we put this in a slope-intercept format to find its slope. So we're going to divide everything by 3. So this becomes y, this becomes 1/3 x, this becomes minus 4/3, and the slope is 1/3. This is the slope of this line. The one perpendicular to it is the negative reciprocal of that. So if this is the slope for this line, reciprocal and negated, the slope is -3. So we want to call them M1 and M2, so they are different in that sense. So very straightforward. Y minus y1 equals M times x minus x of 1. So we have this pair with this slope, which means y minus 1 equals -3x minus minus 2, meaning +2. Minus 3x minus 6. Move this +1. That's the equation of the new line that is perpendicular to the old line. So this is perpendicular. So let's graph both of them. To graph both of them, this one, we need two pairs. If x is 0, y is -4/3. If y is 0, x equals 4. So those are the two pairs. So 0, -4/3 is -1 and 1/3 is somewhere here. 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is here. And you connect them, and that's the given line. For this one, this is, of course, the y-intercept 0, -5. And if you set y equal to 0, x becomes -5/3. I'm assuming nobody has any problem with that, but quickly, you can say y is 0, and you can find this. So plot those two pairs, everybody. 0, -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, -5 is here. And -5/3 is -1 and 2/3. So somewhere here. And connect the two. And you're done. It's pretty simple, everybody. All right, we're gonna move on. And this is -2, 1. That's the pair that we used. All right, a retired woman has $50,000 to invest, but needs to make $6,000 a year from the interest to meet certain living expenses. One bond pays 15% annual interest. The rest, she wants to put it in a CD that pays 7%. If we let X be the amount the woman invests in the 15% bonds, how much will she be able to invest in the CD? Set up and solve the equation for how much the woman should invest in each option to sustain a $6,000 annual return. All right, so we are looking at the simple interest I equals PRT. So we are going to go with a table such as this one, the investment. The first one is at 15%, the second one is at 7%. Here's the total, and this is the amount of interest. So what do we need to get? And by the way, one might say, okay, why don't we put all of them in 15%? You're 100% right. Why not? but normally there are restrictions, that's why. Okay, so X amount here, 50,000 total, interest total of $6,000 we need. So we put in what we can find here. Now, if this is 50,000 total, and this is X amount, how much is here? 50,000 minus X. I is P or T. So the product of these two, and the time is 1 year, by the way, annual. So this is 0.15x. This is 0.07 times 50,000 minus X. And so these two must add up to 6,000. So 0.15x and 0.07 times 50,000 minus X must add up to 6,000. That's how you solve this. And so having said that, this one we keep. When we multiply this to 7 times 5, 35. Let me just show you quickly, remind you how you do that. 7 times 5 is 35. You have two decimals. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. You have two more zeros, so you put 2. If you have decimals, you go with the decimals. So 3,500 minus 0.07x is 6,000. So you put together what you can. This one and this one is 0.08x. This one you subtract from 6,000, you get 2,500. You divide both sides by 0.08, and you get $31,250. That is the amount for X. That is the amount that we invest at 15%. The rest of it, that means 50,000 minus X. 50,000 minus $31,250, which is $18,750 at 7% investment. Laura starts riding her bike at 20 miles per hour. After a while, she slows down to 12 miles per hour and maintains that speed for the rest of the trip. The whole trip of 70 miles takes her 4.5 hours. For what distance did she travel at 20 miles per hour? So this is a class of problem known as motion problem. D distance is R rate or speed times T time. So anytime you have a motion problem, you must have a table like this. Just fill it up. That's all you have to do. So starting point, the speed or rate is 20 miles per hour. After a while, it goes down to 12 miles per hour. So it's very straightforward what's happening so far. Maintains the speed. The whole trip is 70 miles. The distance, the total is 70 miles over the course of total of 4.5 hours. So for what distance did she travel 20 miles per hour? Let's go with the time t or x or y or z here. Normally we go with t. If the total time is 4.5, this must be what? 4.5 minus t. So pay attention to how we put this. So you define your variable, and then you decide on this one. What is the distance here? D equals RT, 20 times t. What about here? 12 times 4.5 minus t. And if you add them up, you must get 70 miles. So add them up. Add these two, set it equal to 7. And so 20t, 12 times 4.5 is 54 minus 12t. These two add up to 8t. Subtract 54 from 70. 16 divided by 2, you get 2 hours. So if the t is 2 hours, the distance is 2 times 20, 40 miles. Pay attention to the question. The question was, for what distance did she travel at 20 miles per hour? So this is what we wanted to get. And that's extremely important to understand. Otherwise, we can easily make a mistake. All right. So very straightforward. First, solve the formula for W. P equals 2L plus 2W. This is the perimeter of a rectangular shape. Then use your result to find the width W of a rectangle whose length is 15 and whose perimeter is 58. So we have this shape, rectangular shape. Here's the width, here's the length. And P is 2L plus 2W. By the way, class, one might say 2 times L plus W is the same thing, okay? So we want to solve for W. We are going to isolate it by moving the 2L. We're going to divide by 2. Now, here's what I want you to pay attention to before I move on. If you want to separate it into two fractions, please understand it's the same as P over 2 minus 2L over 2 becomes minus L. So it is not the case that you can drop the 2. Now you plug in P 58 minus 2 times L is 15. So we get 30 here. And so we have 28 over 2 or 14. If the units are given, you must give it back with proper units. If not, you don't have to put any units. Okay. Perform the indicated operation and express the result as a simplified complex number. So let's remind everybody what is a complex number. By definition, I is square root of -1. So square root of minus n is I square root of n. You can't have a negative under the radical. And complex number is in the form of a plus bi. Therefore, it's not a big deal. Let's multiply. Imagine this is x and do the foiling. The product of these two is 2 minus 3i minus 4i plus 6i squared. So far, just like before. However, I want to look at powers of I. If I is square root of -1, I squared is -1, I cubed is negative I to the power of 4 is 1, because this one when you square it is -1. I cubed is, let's just put it here, I squared times I, and I squared is -1. I to the power of 4, you can say I squared squared, which means -1 squared, which means positive. And so we are going to replace 6i squared with -6. Okay. Also, notice a plus bi times a minus bi is that. I'll go over that in a moment. But this one is -6. With 2 becomes -4. And these two are -7i. Let me erase my work. When you look at this, recall a plus b times a minus b is a squared minus b squared. Therefore, this is a squared minus b squared I squared. Because I squared is -1, you get a squared plus b squared. Now, if they said divide or simplify or put it into standard form of a complex number a plus bi, they all mean the same thing. The process is very simple. You multiply by the complex conjugate of the denominator. Now, again, a plus bi and a minus bi are complex conjugate. Remember the conjugate, you just change this sign for one of them, right? So you multiply by 2 plus I and you divide by 2 plus I. The reason you do that, because this process makes the denominator a real number. So first, this becomes 2 squared plus 1 squared. The numerator, you do the FOILing. 3 times 2 is 6, times I is 3i, 4i times 2 is 8i, and times I is 4i squared. You change the I squared to -1, you get plus 4i squared changed into -4. These two add up to 2. These two add up to 11i. 4 and 1 is 5. You can leave it like that. However, if somebody asks you what is A and B, you should be able to recognize this. I highly recommend you put it in this format. So if somebody asks, okay, A plus BI, what is A? You don't want to make a mistake of saying it's 2 over 5. What is B? Not 11, 11 over 5. Square root of -9 plus 3 square root of -16. Anytime you have a negative under the radical, you want to make sure you get rid of it. You don't do any work on that otherwise. So this becomes 3i, this becomes 4i. They add up to 15i. I to the power of minus 6, a couple of different ways to handle them. Let's look at one way, and then I want to go over some generalization as far as powers of I are concerned that are larger than 4. So 1 over I to the power of 6, and I to the power of 6 is the same as I to the power of 4 times I squared. I to the power of 4 is 1, so 1 over I squared, or negative 1. So how do we handle that when you come across that? You divide the exponent, in this case 6, by 4. You get 1 with the remainder 2. So I to the power of 6 is I to the power of the remainder, which is negative 1. So you divide by 4. For example, if I want to find I to the power of 1225, I have to divide 1225 by 4. It doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is the remainder. And I hope you recognize number 25. When you want to divide, a number is divisible by 4 if the last two digits give you a number that is divisible by 4. So 24 is divisible by 4. That means the remainder is 1. So this is I to the power of 1, or simply I. So that's the methodology. Just to make sure we have mastered it, let's look at this example, and I'm going to erase my work so I have enough room to work on this. So I to the power of 43, the exponent is 43. I'm going to divide by 4. Remember, I'm interested in the remainder only. Remainder only. It doesn't matter. The answer is 10. The remainder is 3. So therefore, I to the power of 43 is the same as I to the power of remainder, which is I cubed, which is negative I. This is the fastest and easiest way to come up with the answer. Divide by 4 and keep the remainder.